As Anthony said, we co-curate the Lehigh Valley LGBTQ plus film series at Frank Binko Alehouse Cinemas. This is a free series. You can find out more information for this, steelsax.org/film. Adriana and Kathy, do you want to say anything?
Sure. My name is Adriana. Like Alessandra said, I'm a member of the cinema committee here at Arts Quest. I also do some programming at the theater. Obviously, I work on the LGBTQ film series with Alessandra and Kathy. Until recently, I was the curator of the horror series. I do some genre programming as well, a little bit of everything. So yeah, Kathy, your turn.
Thank you everyone for being here. Being part of this film series has been really exciting. We're in, I think, 2.5 years now, and it keeps growing. So make sure you follow us on Facebook or from the Frank Binko Alehouse Cinema website. We're very excited about tonight's show. Hopefully you'll enjoy it and participate. And that's about it.
Yeah, awesome. And also another shameless plug, because I completely forgot. I didn't completely forget. Sorry, Fran, if you're watching this. I also co-curate Cinema Significa, which is a Latin and Hispanic film series, another free series. So check out all the wonderful things that we're talking about. steelstacks.org/film. If you're watching this on Facebook, you're already halfway there. You're already connected. So let's get into why we're here today. So in addition to curating these free film screenings, Kathy and Adriana and I have gotten to take part in a couple of movie talks and remembering the COVID lockdown times where there was a lot of really cool virtual programming going on. You're currently experiencing virtual programming right now. We wanted to keep the conversations going and extend them beyond movies and talk about TV shows. And this talk, it's a long time coming to talk about this TV show. The L Word is what we're talking about, not Generation Q, but we will definitely get there. I'll start off and just say that I thought it was important to talk about this series just because of the impact this show had on me. I was very late to the game and I binge watched it my final year in college. So I don't know if you want to briefly talk about that and then give a little bit of a backstory about what the heck the L Word even is. So Adriana, when did you watch the L Word?
I was also a latecomer to the series too, but like way later than you. I didn't watch it all the way through for the first time until probably about 5 or so years ago, just because it was on Netflix. So it was the first time it was easily accessible for me. I mean, I think until then it kind of existed on DVD. And then obviously, of course, on cable when it originally aired. But yeah, I mean, as you already know, like I'm pretty seasoned viewer of queer cinema and like queer TV, but the L Word was just like a major milestone that I had skipped. So I decided I need to sit down and watch this entire show from beginning to end. And so I did. And then I rewatched it a few times since then.
Yeah. Kathy?
Yeah. 2004, right, was when it first aired. And yes, I think most people like myself viewed the first episode and continued to watch it, even though at times it drove you crazy, even though it was a new way to observe women, lesbians. The gay scene up until then was very limited, especially for women. But was the reason why I started with Showtime during that time, because that was the only way to get it on cable, like Adriana said. But yeah, so right from the beginning, and then watched it, and then recently rewatched it again. So
Sure.
it was very cool.
Have either of you seen Generation Q?
Yes. And we can talk about favorite characters, but for those of you who might not be too familiar with what we're talking about, the L Word, we're talking about this groundbreaking television series that premiered on Showtime in 2004 is when we're talking about where it aired on cable initially in 2004, created by Eileen Shaken, revolving around the lives and relationships of these queer women / non-men, I should say. We'll talk about the gender dynamics and some of the things that they got right and some of the things that we were kind of like, ooh, about. But more notably in their self-identification, these are women who identify as lesbian and bisexual, and they are living in LA. So it was notable for its candid portrayal of these characters and themes, and that was very groundbreaking, especially for the time in which this occurred. And then we kind of see this again when Generation Q came to be. But we're following this diverse group of friends. We're exploring different aspects of their life. The first season, the first episode doesn't really set you up for what is to come. It's absolutely wild. There are different dynamics that we see within their career struggles. Some of them are trying to build families. Some of them have a boyfriend, and we can talk about how that's kind of we actually talked about this prior. How that's the first thing you see when you watch this series. But it had a 6-season run. It received a lot of praise, a lot of criticism. Similar to when we were talking about Happiest Season, it was one of those things where we were like, we want representation, not like this, but we're still going to enjoy it though. Like we're going to eat it up, but also no. And there was actually a lot of scrutiny facing some of the storylines and the character developments that we can absolutely talk about. And there was a book spinoff in 2006, I believe, and then in 2019 it was announced that there would in fact be a sequel entitled The L Word Generation Q, obviously for queer. And everyone, me, was very excited by this because I was so intrigued to see how any type of modern interpretation would be taken on these characters. And the intention was to continue to explore LGBTQIA plus themes with new and returning characters. I'm very thankful that that made it to the cut and made the cut. And then just furthering this idea, this legacy of what the L word is in contemporary television. So now that I kind of talked about Bet a little bit, do we want to talk about first impressions, the first thing that we saw when we first started watching the L word, the OG, not Generation Q, and maybe just some initial thoughts on those relationships that were displayed, or maybe even some insight into characters that we thought were the best and why it is Bet. I'm kidding. Why we like the characters that we like. I'm gonna go
Good,
ahead, Kathy.
Adriana.
Oh, no,
Oh,
sorry.
you want me to go?
Sure.
Well, I just was happy to see the representation be there, even with some of it being flawed originally, in my opinion. But prior to that, you had Ellen on Ellen show. You had some of these movies even weren't of the best quality except for a handful. So this was with the portrayal that it was, but also you had filmmakers who were also from the gay community, and you had more input, I think, to try to bring it from the lesbian bisexual point of view. But the first thing that struck me when I watched it was that it did start with you seeing Jenny's boyfriend unpacking in his house doing something or other. I thought that was kind of funny to start it with that. But seeing the variety of couples, I thought they did a really great job bringing LA to life, because I think if this was set in New York, it would be totally different. Having the planet be the place where they all meet up, and although they are working, they're really not working that New York City vibe. So I thought that was really interesting how they captured the personality of LA. I did really, right from the start, like Alice. I thought she was very funny. And I think even though she did like to gossip and would love to chitter chatter, I think she had a really genuine heart. I also liked her. I like Dana a bit as well, seeing her perspective, even though they kind of made it of a satire, but seeing her at the time as an athletic, very popular sports figure in the tennis world, and not being able to be their true self. So those were a couple things that jumped out at me originally. And it wasn't Bet at first.
Sure. Adriana, any thoughts?
I guess one of the things that stood out to me right away was that it was kind of like a who's who of like important queer creatives of the 90s. Like you had people like Guinevere Turner and Rose Trochet involved. Obviously Eileen Chaikin as well. You had Sandra Bernhardt, like, and this is all in the very first season. And that, like, the names attached to the show is what stood out to me first. And then obviously, just speaking to Kathy's point about kind of I guess the surprise or the shock of the show opening up with this, with like a straight relationship, but then you realize, like, okay, so Jenny is our audience surrogate character. Like, she is the general audience's entry point into the like queer scene in Los Angeles. And so I understand why they made the choice to introduce Jenny that way. But yeah, I was kind of surprised that the very first thing I saw in this important lesbian centric show was like heterosexuality blasted. So, but yeah, and I guess what else can I, positive things I can say about this show, of my general impressions. You brought up Alice, Kathy. Alice is my favorite character, and I thought it was really interesting that the show had a bisexual character, because that was not very common to see in television at that time, especially, like, well, I don't know. I lost my train of thought, but yeah, that was a surprise to me as well. And I think generally the show handles that
It's a good point,
okay.
because with Alice, like, I'm just thinking again, as they're meeting, there's a lot of debate throughout some of the early seasons, especially. And I think Dana is the protagonist, saying, well, you're either or, you can't be both. And they have discussions about, you should be
Right, but the
either.
thing about Alice is that she never accepts that. She doesn't
No,
allow
not at all.
her identity to be erased. She is always very, very sure of who she is.
Yep.
Which I really appreciated. Now, there is that very strange storyline with Alice in season 1 where she's dating the guy who identifies as a male lesbian, which
Yeah.
That was
in
weird.
some ways that's kind of interesting, like that they were attempting to unpack very complicated, like, gender identity issues, but I just don't think, like, we weren't at a place, like, culturally, where we had all of the language to like navigate that sort of, like, to like gender identity stuff as well as we do today. And that comes up again later in the show with the character of Max. But yeah, that Alice is my favorite. So that the fact that they thought it was important to include a bisexual character, I think, the writers of the show deserve credit for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gender is definitely, and again, we were talking about like the criticisms within this show, and obviously at the time too, we're talking about 2004. So it's hard to kind of just to say, well, they did it wrong, because who am I to say that I'm the expert on how things can be portrayed. But I think I
like,
agree with you.
hindsight is 2020.
Exactly. And like the way that you described it, it was just I think they were definitely attempting to navigate a space in which why what it was kind of just like throwing a lot of things into it, but the way that it was received, at least as an audience member when I was watching it, was just kind of like I don't think it was achieving what they were intending it to achieve, and in the name of inclusivity and expression and whatnot. But yeah, so we were introduced to Jenny. We're introduced to this character, this wonderful character. I don't like Jenny, and that's something that I am very passionate about. And I'm sorry if there's anyone here who disagree. I like the concept of Jenny, the execution, not a fan of. And I especially like, when there were different callbacks and navigating the trauma that Jenny was experiencing and these fantastical elements. I'm typically all about that. And every single time I would just be like, I just cannot. And it was her hair. I mean, Alice, I could forgive with all those hairstyles. I loved Alice so much that it was to the point when I was recapping, going through all the various hairstyles of Alice. I was like, you know what? It's fine. Alice can have whatever hair that she wants. But Jenny, I was like, why is her hair matted all the time? I just couldn't really deal with that, which is a good segue into the fashion. Obviously, it's 2004. I was always drawn to Jennifer Beals, and obviously this is Bette Porter. we know Flashdance. I was always so drawn to her. Maybe it was just the fact that, she exemplified this woman, this leader in the arts, and that's something that I'm very passionate about. But I think I was always just so focused on what she looked like and the texture of her hair and what suit she was wearing that I kind of ignored all of the questionable things that we were seeing. So, were there any specific moments, any specific hairstyles or outfits or anything like that where you're just kind of like, what were we doing? Or were these specific moments where you're just like, this is queer culture, this feels correct, this feels true, and I'm so glad that this was included. Anything like that?
I thought they hit it out of the park with Shane. I remember in a positive way. I remember going to various bars, New York, New Jersey, walking into gay bar, lesbian bar, whatever, and you would see a variety of Shanes there. And I think that, again, we're in New Jersey, we're in the Northeast, but I think they did a great job with Shane and her appearance and identity. I thought they did a good job there.
Sure. Adrian, any moments of fashion or anything that you saw that was kind of like, whoa, or rang true?
Well, I mean, I'll have to agree with Kathy. I think Shane is usually the character I am least puzzled by in terms of
Yeah.
their sartorial choices or their, the way they are styled in that episode. But I don't know. Like, so in 2004, I was 13, so I was not paying attention to fashion. So I don't know how trendy the outfits were in the show, but I have to admit that when I watch it, I'm often very confused by how people are dressing. Like just the jeans, and I don't know. I just feel like it had to have been it had to have been in fashion at the time, and it has escaped me. But yeah, I honestly I don't understand how some of the fashion choices in the show at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was interesting, and obviously we're in LA too. So I feel like whenever I was watching it too, I was just like, this doesn't make sense to me, but I'm on the East Coast, so maybe this is also.
I
And
mean,
also
that
I
could be
watched
it
it,
too. Yeah.
and I watched it like 12 years after it initially aired. But one thing that did ring true for me, we obviously we have the planet, and a lot of the times that was kind of the function, and this is the way that we saw a lot of those guest artists come in because they just happen to be a musical guest, or the music was kind of like woven into an episode. So I'm curious to know, like, if we had any, as we're talking about characters and storyline, any favorite like guests that we had on here. I'm ironically wearing a Tegan and Sarah shirt right now, but mine was Tegan and Sarah. And because I was introduced to Tegan and Sarah in 2013, very very late, and the Heartthrob album had just came out. So it tickled me pink when I watched this like 3 years later. I was like, oh my gosh, Tegan and Sarah were in this. Obviously, duh, why would they not be? And that was something that was super cool to see because it wasn't Tegan and Sarah going back and bantering as like, in concerts they typically do. It was them just being these cool queer icons. So it was really cool just seeing them incorporated and being kind of like honored in that way. That was really fun. Sorry, we got a message. It's definitely an LA style of dress, always jeans, even for special occasions. So denim, jeans, all the time.
Thank you for confirming that it was regional.
But
yeah,
any special guest moments?
Well, first of all, Pam Grier. I mean, I don't think she would qualify as a special guest because she played a recurring character, but I think it's awesome that Pam Grier was part of the L Word. I mean, I'm a big fan of exploitation films, and that includes black exploitation, which of course Pam Grier was a staple of black exploitation cinema in the 70s. Foxy Brown, Black Mama, White Mama, Coffee, so many great films. So that was like a real nerd out moment for me when I started watching, and I learned that Pam Grier was playing Beth's sister. But I guess probably like other than Pam Grier, my favorite guest appearance would probably be Slater-Kinney. They play at the Planet in one episode. They play their song Jumpers. They're a band that I really like. And I think Alan Cumming was also in that episode. He had kind of a multi-episode arc. He plays a real scumbag, but I mean, I love Alan Cumming. So it was cool to see him on the show. Snoop Dogg.
Mm-hmm.
Rosanna Arquette is great.
Mm,
Yeah, there's so many great guest stars. I could just keep naming them.
yeah.
Kathy, do you have any favorite guest artist moments or special guest
Yeah.
moments?
Well, like they had guests, then they had reappearing guests, then they had cameos. So there's a variety. So my favorite cameo, and this will be a generational thing, I'm sure, but was when Kate Clinton did her cameo as Bet and Tina's sex therapist.
Mm.
Uh,
Oh
Kate
yeah.
Clinton being such a, icon and like to me, out comedian from the get go. And she's going to counsel Bet and Tina on um, their sexual relationship. And that I found to be very funny and very entertaining because here's Kate Clinton, who's this comedian, talking to them in this very dry and very funny way. And they're just looking at her like, what? So I thought that was my favorite cameo would be Kate Clinton. I love Sandra Bernhardt as Jenny's writing
Yes. Oh
instructor.
my gosh.
I
She
thought
gets
Absolutely.
to
she
say stuff to Jenny that we all want to
Yes.
say.
Yes.
You
It's
can't
literally,
write.
it's the best. Sorry
yeah
to cut you,
that
Kathy. Anything else? Any?
I thought they weren't meant to be a comedy routine, but maybe they were. I thought Jane Lynch and Sybil Shepherd and their dynamic was very entertaining, and Holland Taylor, I thought was wonderful in this. Talk about a spicy older person. I just thought she was
She's always
wonderful.
great.
Yeah, yeah. I love when she's going to visit her daughter in prison, and all the prisoners as she's walking by are yelling at her and whistling, and she turns to one and said, "You couldn't even handle it, you and your friends." So I mean, I just thought she was wonderful.
Yeah. So you're talking about Pam Grier, and I obviously I didn't forget, but it just reminded me of how Kit Porter has a relationship with a genderqueer person. Ivan, that's
Yeah.
another that was an interesting plot line and a couple of episodes for me to kind of like digest because of how I want to use the word disrespectful, but I also want to give space to the word transphobic, how people kind of handle the character of Max. And
Yeah.
and I feel like a lot of the time the writing would kind of mask this as like, oh no, well, just because of my background. And like I'm not wearing the fancy denim, I'm wearing the country denim or things like that. But like that's not really what the issue was, right? And so I don't know if we want to talk a little bit more about this idea of how they portrayed it. We kind of again see this in Generation Q, which we can talk about more in that I've always felt like, or I always felt when it came out in 2019, I was very excited to watch it. And then an introduction to a wider scope of identities within this. I always felt that it was more so like, okay, there are sometimes I felt that they were like, how many things can we fit into one thing just to say that is it performative? Is it inclusion? Is it representation? Obviously, like I think it's important to see these different identities in the space, but then I also was like, but how much time did you take to kind of flesh out this character versus like you're just going to put them in and not really give space to the fact that like maybe this wouldn't have happened like this, or maybe they shouldn't be reduced to this, and maybe they have a plot line that doesn't have to do with them being discriminated against. So that's kind of how
Mm.
I felt with that, and just seeing what now I'm kind of segueing to Generation Q again with trans identity, again with individuals who have disabilities. I was just kind of like, yes, and like what work did you do to do this? Like obviously having actors of the identity, that's a step in the right direction. I think a handful of the actors who were a part of the OG cast were in fact out at the time of airing. If not, they are definitely out now. And so that's
Mhm.
also really cool to kind of see how there was intention in casting people specifically with gender identity and this queer identity in embodying these people. But again, 2004, it was kind of just like, yeah, we're out, but we're not like over here. It was this interesting thing to navigate and kind of see. But I'm not sure if anyone else had any responses to kind of the more controversial things and the depictions of characters and whatnot within the queer community. Oh, Marley, sorry, we got another special guest. That was a really cool plot point as well. And again, talking about actors with disabilities. But yeah. So Adrienne and Kathy, anything to say about any of the more controversial things with the characters and the plot points?
Uh, yeah, I mean, well, as I said earlier, hindsight is 2020. It's very easy for us now to look at a show like The L Word, a show that aired 20 years ago, and identify all of the ways that they really dropped the ball in terms of handling, sensitive subject matter with care and responsibility. But at the same time, 20 years ago, like you said, or I guess I also said this earlier, we were not at the same like level of awareness that we are now with certainly with gender identity issues. And so I think you know criticism shouldn't be off the table. We should be able to criticize these things, but at the same time I think we should also be able to recognize that these writers did at least try to introduce general audiences, because this was a show on Showtime that obviously targeted the LGBTQ demographic, but they were trying to really rope in all kinds of viewership. And so, I do think that it is commendable that the writers of the show were trying to introduce general audiences to these issues and to challenge people maybe, or open minds. But I just think they could have been a bit more thoughtful with how they did it.
Sure. Kathy, any thoughts on that?
I mean, I guess for me that it's like a tug of war with being grateful that they entered into this space when they did, and then thinking, they tried to make it and claim that it was from the female gaze, but quite often I felt like this was, some of this was also for the male gaze or the heteronormative approach to it. And I know maybe back then, and I'm not sure if I don't think I read this somewhere, but maybe one of you have, or someone in our audience can share a comment. They wanted to get this on the air, and sometimes while they're getting a show like this on the air, breaking new ground, they can't go and just, have it be what it really is. They have to like gently bring some of these characters to life, whether it's someone in the trans community or bisexual community. Like when Tina decides, like her character is a bisexual character basically, but she still calls herself a lesbian because she feels it's political. But then she's seeing it, she starts seeing men in whatever season that was. So I don't know. I was a bit perplexed by that part of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I didn't really mention this before, but based on what I read, and correct me if like you've heard differently, but the inspiration for this entire series when Eileen was writing it, I believe she like attended a dinner party and she was seemingly the only straight person in a group of lesbians. So it was kind of just it's interesting to think that like that is kind of what spurred it. Like, oh, as like a spectator, like, oh, I'm observing this. This would make a really good show. And it's interesting to see how then that has transformed into this idea that the impact of the show is then like this idea of lesbian chic, you know what I mean? And the political affiliation with, or not affiliation, but just the dynamic with that, with like how those conversations started. It was always so interesting to me. It's kind of like the idea of like, wow, this is a really cool, like I'm gonna cite Happy Season again. It's like this is the queer holiday film, but who is it really for? And then who wrote it? And who was in the room when we're talking about it? So yeah, that also was really intriguing to me, and not to dismiss like that idea that there might be people of queer identity who feel that they want to use language one way or the other because of the impact that it has, or they might not be seen as enough of blank. Like if she were to use the term bisexual, we saw how they ate apart people of different gender identities that would that have been accepted. I know we have Alice here, but like what was kind of like what obstacles were people facing in using the language, which was extremely crucial back then, because we didn't have a lot of terms that exist now. Sorry, I'm reading another note. Just like Jenny's movie, her and Cheetah navigating the meta plot. That yeah, absolutely. But yeah. So what other aspects of the show kind of spoke to you? So I wanted to bring up we talked about Dana a little bit. Spoiler alert, that moment, Dana's death, rest in peace, Dana, that crushed me in a way that I didn't even know I could be crushed. It was absolutely horrible. But I remember the moment, and I'm not sure if it was like the direct episode afterward or close to it, when they're looking out into this waterfall, and then you see Dana kind of in it, and this idea that I've seen multiple iterations of the theme of just water symbolizing fluidity and sexuality and femininity and identity. So I always thought that was a really cool image that I've noticed along throughout the series. But is there anything else that kind of like stuck out to either one of you about the same, or like thematically, that you saw that worked for the series, not necessarily in the dialogue and the plot points, but just like with the actual visuals we were seeing on screen?
The visuals.
Yeah. Not, I mean, well, maybe visuals isn't the correct term, because we could talk about all the steamy moments too. But anything I mean, we talked about fashion, we talked about hair, but anything else that kind of stood out thematically? It doesn't have to be like that was directly like the water, but anything like that. We're just thinking. Anyone in the audience? Anyone have anything that really spoke to them within the series that they're kind of like, yeah, what about this? The circus imagery whenever we kind of went back
I mean, there's the chart,
the chart that's
iconic.
Yeah.
Mhm. Sure.
I do kind of appreciate how the show illustrates how insular a queer community can be, even in a larger city. You kind of eventually start running into the same people, or all the same people start dating each other. I thought that was the show kind of explores that aspect to queer community in a way that I felt is very true to life, and it's just fun to see in a show.
Yeah.
It's super fun to see. And so obviously this is like on display behind me, but now that we're talking about the chart, are there any what's the word? I don't want to say pairings, because obviously some of these were a little bit more defined relationships, some of these were affairs, some of these were little situations. Did any were any of these like your favorite? I have one that probably isn't traditionally accepted, but
I can tell you the most cursed pairing is Jenny and Shane.
Yes. What? That was so wild for just like 12 different reasons. But yeah, what else? What other pairings come to mind? I'm gonna put out Bet and Candace. I know
There's so many.
Mhm.
the sequence in the prison cell
Yeah.
that just spoke to me for many different reasons. But anything else, you can literally use a cheat sheet that's behind me. I never liked Tina and Bet. There, I said it. I'm so sorry if I'm offending anyone. I wasn't a fan from day one. I love Jennifer Beals, and we can talk about Generation Q then. But I never. What did the kids say? I never shipped them. What about
I
you,
mean,
Kathy?
I really thought that Bet and Jody,
Yeah,
Maple,
Marley. Yep, yep.
I thought they had a nice chemistry at the beginning, and then of course because then Bet gets drawn back to Tina, that blows up. But I thought they had something initially, and I really thought Dana and Alice were great.
Yeah.
As a couple, there was something kind of quirky but sensual about it. I don't know.
Sure. What about
I love.
oh, were you gonna
No, I
say?
was just gonna say when they went to the Dinah Shore golf event and they were, play act, or was that on the cruise ship? One of those, they were play acting, and I just thought they were great.
Yeah. So was there anyone we liked with Jenny? Because even like with Marina, I didn't like how that kind of unfolded with, and the just the dismissal of Marina. Obviously, we know what happened with that plot point, but Was there anyone that we were like, yes, Jenny, why didn't you just stay in your lane and stay here? Adriana's shaking her head.
No,
Say
I
more.
don't think so. I honestly kind of love how messy Jenny is. And I find it really fascinating that the writers of the show chose to make their protagonists so unlikable and continuously unlikable throughout the entire series until
He died.
Oh, I think we're losing Adriana. Give her a second. But to that point, yeah, Jenny's incredibly. Oh, sorry, we're cutting in that with Adriana.
But as Adriana was saying about being a protagonist, being so messy. And I think getting back, see, a spark to your question about visual, metaphoric, or however you want to define it. When I think about Jenny, and yeah, she's messy. I don't think I would trust that, I wouldn't, but she's definitely wounded. She's a problem. But they all are messy. They all are cheaters, and they all kind of do things on the down low that aren't really cool. But it's Jenny that everyone really comes after. And I think it's because of what Adriana said, that she's so messy and problematic, and just her appearance and her voice. Everyone, especially the fan base of the show, not many people are fans of Jenny, but Bet isn't, always pure, and neither are the others. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, as you saw the mirror of Jenny with everyone else.
Sure, absolutely. They're definitely all messy, and I can't forgive everyone. That was it was an interesting dynamic to see, like whenever Shane was interacting with someone, being able to explicitly go through her boundaries and just be like, no, like we're not doing this. I said that we're doing this, or like we're not going to be doing this. These are the expectations. I want to manage your expectations, and to kind of still see how like Shane is portrayed as this like player when it's like, no, like out of everyone, there's honesty, there's communication here. There's obviously a lot of avoidance and emotional unavailability, but at least Shane is kind of owning it for the most part. And she still does some questionable things, but there's always a moment where she's just like, am I gonna do this right now? Yeah, and that almost like makes it more appealing in my opinion. But sorry, Adrian, I think you're back now. Was there anything else you were trying to say? I know we had some technical difficulties.
No, I think I'm good. Although I will say I just thought of another guest star that I
Okay.
liked, which is that Eric Roberts played Shane's father. Eric Roberts is a character actor who has been in over, I think, 400 films. He's just a presence I enjoy anytime he shows up. Of course, he's playing not a great guy in this show, but it was still nice to see him pop up.
Absolutely. So as far as like recognition for this show is concerned, obviously I say this as I watched it 12 years after its initial air date. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know too many, if any major awards. It obviously received several like nominations over the years. My girl Jennifer Beals was nominated for a Golden Globe. I think it was 2005 for Best Actress in a Drama Series. So it's interesting to see that the impact of that and the recognition of this series, because when the sequel was announced, right, Generation Q, I was extremely nervous that like it was going to be so good, similar to what happened with League of Their Own, that it was going to be so good and then finally what we wanted it to be. And then since for whatever reason we want to name it, in this recognition of it, it was just going to tank because it just no one wanted to continue it. But have either of you fully or embarked on the Generation Q? Because we might as well talk about that, because some of the characters in the OG series do travel through. Obviously, Jenny does not, but through to Generation Q. So, Kathy, have you seen Generation Q?
I I dabbled in it a little bit, and then that was too much.
Too much.
Yeah, I just thought it was I guess maybe I'm just nostalgic for the old drama. And it was just, I don't think it was done very well, put it that way.
Sure. Adriana?
I got a few episodes in and then I bailed. I just kind of lost interest.
Really? Cool.
Yeah. I was gonna say something else, but
That's okay. If you think about it.
lost it.
I was so hyped for Generation Q only because the thing I think it just resonated more with me because I always went for Bet, right? I was like bet. I'm obviously watching Bet in a time where like I'm not in the sphere age wise or just like whatever with Bet. The introduction of Danny for me was so important, and Gigi as well. So I would watch an entire spin-off series with Danny and Gigi. To be frank, I was so excited by them, and with everyone that they kind of interacted with too. It wasn't like I was like, let's have Gigi and Danny. Although love Gigi and Danny, but I could not stand Sophie and Finley, and I feel like again there was just some slightings in how like Micah's character was portrayed and whatnot. But we still had Shane, we had Bet, we had Tina, unfortunately, and we had Alice. So I was really
Yeah.
excited about that because I was able to see characters that I resonated a little bit more strongly with. And with that being said, I hated other characters more than I hated Jenny. so so maybe we're onto something in that. Like it kind of missed the mark in a lot of different ways. I don't know how successful it would have been if we didn't have ultimately any of like with Alice, Tina, and Shane. I think for me, those are the main base of the recipe that makes the L Word so great. The messiness is excusable if those three characters are involved. And then Tina came back and I was like, why are you doing this to me? But that was just my interpretation on it. But
What I found, Alessandra, what I found interesting when you look at the two series, right, Generation Q and the original, is, you know, they had it as they created like a soap opera in one sense. It was dramatic on, these topics that would come up, you know. So whether it was the chart or just different things that they would be talking about or storylines, but they also had levity in it, or they also at times try to make a social or political stance, in a positive way. In the first one, I thought the writing was a bit better, even though at times it was flawed, of course, as we've been talking about. But like the photograph behind me, for instance, is one of my favorite parts of uh, the series in season 4, I believe, where it's the episode Layup, and Poppy challenges Alice and all her friends to a basketball game. And the footage around it is very lighthearted and fun and comical. And, they're trying to play the game real. And there's Jenny with a cup of coffee, not bothering. Like, you get the sense of their personalities from a scene like that, but you can laugh and appreciate it. Where I didn't find some of the humor and lightheartedness went very far in the second series, which made it, I don't know, not my cup of tea.
there was also the god awful moment. There was some really interesting audio mixing of them doing like a karaoke performance. And then I was so disappointed. I'll bring up Tegan and Sarah yet again when we see this proclamation of love to Finley, and they decided to go with Closer by Tegan and Sarah, which in my opinion, fabulous song, 6 years too late and using it. And it was just so awkward and painful and cringy and not mixed well. And I was just like, I'm all for them using a Tegan and Sarah song, and that song definitely resonates. But I was like, there also are plenty of other queer artists that they could have picked from. And I don't know if the reason was just like the history of the relationship, the fact that they're in LA, or whatnot, but it was like, I want you, Finley, I want you. And I just was like, I'm feeling if I could feel less than nothing right now, I feel in opposition of this because of how this is kind of working. So I don't know if it was an issue of just pandering and just kind of like, the after school special conundrum where, they're just trying to shove so much into it. With that being said, whenever Danny was on that screen, I was like, yes, give me more of this content. But yeah, I think there was something really special with the OG cast that just like clicked and it worked, and I was intrigued and I was interested in every single plot point and every single webbing connection that we saw here, just because everyone, which I mean, it's the writing, but it's also to the credit of the talented actors that they had. Not to say that Generation Q didn't have that, but I think Generation Q, there were different intentions and different objectives, where the L Word was just kind of like, no, wouldn't it be cool if we had this soap opera where like you see a sex scene, but it's these two women and oh my gosh, she's cheating on her wife. Like, like they do it too. It was this whole big just messiness that was cool to kind of like, it's like the reality TV situation where you're like, I hate this. I need more. Like, but except you don't hate it. But anyone who's on this call right now, do you have any moments that kind of stick out when you're thinking about, hey, like I'm logging onto this talk about the L Word right now. This is a moment that really sticks out to me, or this character is the best, and that character is best. No, but anything like that. And I don't think we have any comments on the Facebook live feed, but just give it a second to open it up to anyone. Feel free to, if you want to chat it to somebody. While we're waiting for maybe some feedback, I think we can definitely talk about our upcoming. Oh, none at this time. That's okay. But and I know some people were messaging me directly, so feel free.
Alessandra and Adriana, I'm really surprised that either the audience and especially both of you didn't discuss how much you love the theme song that started in season 2, because
wow,
I loved how Betty just took over the music from season 2 on in. It was really just thrilling. What do you think?
I mean, look, I don't want to be harsh, but this show easily has one of the most annoying theme songs I've ever heard. There's a great podcast that some of the folks at Autostraddle do called To Ellen Back, where they cover every episode of the L Word. And I distinctly remember in one episode, one of them cracks a joke about the fact that, at the time, you could not, Netflix didn't offer a skip intro option for the L Word, and they had joked that was an act of homophobia.
It's pretty awful, but I think it's awful just also because of how much that is stuck in my head. Like, just it's all the intrusive thoughts of my nightmares, talking, nothing, it's literally etched in my brain in ways that I wish I could wash it out. Like it's so bad. And then we had these sultry images, and to the 2004, like, when it initially aired, and then like that almost looked like an America's Next Top Model intro. It was just really awkward, which I guess was the vibe that was around the right time. And then just changing into something a little bit more sultry. I don't know. I would have, one of those moments where I would have loved to have been in the room when they were discussing and thinking, what would be good? I have this great idea, and why nobody shut that down. So those are my thoughts on the intro song. Mary says Tina is my favorite. Listen, I'm sorry. I respect your love for Tina. I don't know if I just wanted Tina with someone else. There were just so many times I just didn't. You know what it is? I didn't like how she yelled at Beth, and how like after Beth loses her job, and they're just talking about, and it was like over like some top that she got for yoga, and she's like, well, how much money did you spend on that? And Beth was just like, are you kidding me right now? I used to be the breadwinner and used to like live off of my income. And it was not exactly, but like I was so upset by that because I felt like that just showed volumes and not just like, and don't get me wrong, totally that did not deserve Tina. And just like it, to me it showed Tina's true colors, and obviously Tina's priorities shifted and that's totally valid, but there was never any like when Bet was like, okay, let's try this again. I felt like Tina was perpetually punishing Bet. And I'm not saying that's unjustified because what Bet did was really messed up. But also, Tina wasn't perfect either. It was one of those things where it was just like, oh, I just hate them together. And I don't know why. I think I just love Jennifer Beals and I wanted her to get everything, even though she was spunky and she would speak her mind and she would have outbursts. And, I would be like, yeah, but she's just really passionate. I was just constantly excusing Jennifer Beals in this show, and that makes me a little toxic. But yeah, yeah. Anyone else in the chat want to talk about who their favorite character is? And I promise I won't rip that character apart. Maybe they'll open something else up that we can talk about.
Uh, I,
Otherwise,
I really like Tess. She wasn't my favorite character, but I loved her with Alice. I thought she was a really cool character. And if there's any bright light, Alessandra in Generation Q is when Tess comes and saves Alice's cat that's caught in the tree. And
yeah.
then at Tina and Bet's wedding, they share a dance. And that did warm my romantic heart. So that was a shining light in Generation Q for me. And Adriana, you really liked Alice. Was there a particular relationship or something about Alice that you thought really was great or ideal?
Well, I already talked about the fact that she was just very secure in her identity, but also she just has a great personality. She's fun. She doesn't take herself too seriously. She is often, I think, the voice of reason. There's a lot to like about Alice. Yeah.
The cutouts that she had of Dana, the obsession. We've all been there. Maybe not with the cutouts, but that rang true for um that rang true for me just in navigating that breakup. And then, or how many times was she told by her boss, like, you cannot talk about Dana? And it was great. And then obviously we see what unfolds between the two and their relationship, and how at the end of the day Alice showed up, and that's what it
Yeah.
was, and it was beautiful, and it was
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Alice is a
Special
loyal
shout-
friend, also.
Yes,
Yeah.
so loyal. Yeah, unapologetic.
She also has the best line of the show when she is drinking the coffee and says, "This tastes like poopy shit."
And her relationship with Sybil Shepherd was quite entertaining as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when the breakup with Sybil Shepherd happens and Sybil Shepherd can't take it, but then was it the husband of Sybil Shepherd when they were together and then broke up, and Sybil Shepherd's character, I forget her name, just figures out she is a lesbian. The husband shows up at Alice's and there's like 3 or 4 friends with her, and they're
Yeah.
all sitting around in the bed helping. There was just those parts that I really liked of her. And when it got a little silly and warm hearted, which made up for some of the flaws that they had as well.
Sure. Yeah, we have some comments here about people being written off, and I want to give a shout out to the fact that Kit Porter, obviously there was an untimely demise for Kit Porter in Generation Q. So she was gone, and shout out again to Pam Grier and Foxy Brown, because Anthony reminded me that it's playing at Frank Banco Ale Cinemas April 2nd. So look at that. But also, yeah, writing Marina off, that I admit the thumbs up from Anthony. Thank you. But shameless plug. But yeah, Marina, I definitely wanted more from Marina. It actually didn't, a lot of it didn't make sense with me, especially with the planet. And I hated her. I don't even remember her partner's name was. The one who was always traveling. Oh my gosh, name is escaping me. But I really did not like that at all. And just to see like how she was written off, it just didn't make any sense to me. Because she, especially with the impact that character has with with Jenny, you would think that like that's the one that's going to be the lingering thing, and instead it was like, no, what if Jenny just kind of like took over this friend group and like ruined so many more things, in my opinion. But yeah, so and obviously I'm sure there were definitely reasons why certain characters were written off. I'm sure a lot of it wasn't necessarily writing choices sometimes, like just with actors in general and whatnot. But yeah, I was not a fan of that either. But we're approaching the hour mark now. We can definitely still talk if there are any audience members. But on the topic of shameless plugs, I didn't know if we wanted to talk about our upcoming screenings that we have coming up in the LGBTQ plus Lehigh Valley LGBTQ plus film series. So what we, and by we, I'm talking about Adriana, Kathy, and I, what we like to do with this series is kind of alternate who picks the film. So we just showed Mutt at the, not just, it was about a month ago. We showed Mutt that does stream on Netflix, but thank you to everyone who came and watched that in person with us. And the interview that we had with Cole Doman, that should be online now. If not, it should be on there soon. But that was Kathy's pick. And then on April 17th, we will be showing Last Call at Mods. That's my pick, and that talks about the longest running lesbian bar in the United States. And then Adriana, do you want to talk about what your pick is in June?
Sure, yep. On June 9th, we'll be screening the new queer cinema classic Go Fish, directed by Rose Trochet, who directed several episodes of The L Word. And it is co-written by and starring Guinevere Turner, who is also on The L Word. She plays, I'm blanking on her character's name. Give me a second.
Sure.
She plays Gabby DeVoe. Duh. So one of the villains of the show, if you want to call her character that. But Go Fish is a really kind of incredible film. It played at Sundance the same year as Clerks and is kind of similar to Clerks in that it is photographed in black and white and kind of focuses on this small friend group. In this case, a group of lesbian friends in Chicago, just kind of navigating life and relationships and different issues, and it's just made with an incredible amount of verisimilitude. And Guinevere Turner she has like such a great screen presence, and I think it got overshadowed a lot by Clerks, but is a much better movie in many ways, and it's finally kind of being critically reassessed and reevaluated and recognized as a great entry in queer cinema canon. So again, we'll be playing that on June 9th, and I'm working on setting up an interview with Guinevere Turner. So hopefully that pans out, but we shall see. But yeah, come join us on June 9th. I don't know if we mentioned this already, but all of the screenings in the LGBTQ film series are free.
Can't beat free. And steelsex.org/film is where you want to go. If you're watching this on Facebook, connect with us there. And when you go to the website, you can subscribe to our newsletter. That's what we're calling it. And we won't solicit you any further. We just like to tell you what's coming up. But are there any other comments from people watching? I do see another one from Jessica. Have we missed talking about Helena? Loved her and absolutely hated Dylan and her romance with Helena. Absolutely. I liked Helena's hair. I don't know why I'm fixating on hair tonight, but I really liked her hair. I hated Dylan. And Kathy and Adrian, did you have any thoughts about Dylan and what she did to Helena?
Well, I want to talk about Helena for a second, because she is a character who is initially set up as kind of like an adversarial presence.
Yeah.
So the first time I watched it, I was really interested in how, gradually she becomes integrated into the friend group, and she becomes a pretty great character.
Yep.
I don't have anything to say about Dylan. Dylan is terrible. But yeah, I guess that's all. I mean, Alexandra Hedison is great, but
Sure. Kathy, any thoughts about Helena?
Oh yeah, I liked how she went from being the villainess to actually one of the better friends for everybody, you know. I found her to be fun, and I like the dynamic between her and her mother, played by Holland Taylor, right? So I
Yep.
thought all of that, I thought that was just wonderful. How her whole persona character just evolved into something so much more. And see, Alessandra, and she was smart enough to get away from Tina. No
Yes.
offense, Mary, but she
Yeah,
was
sorry,
smart
Mary.
enough to get away from Tina. And I thought that was good too. So
Well, I didn't think this was going to be such an anti-Tina program.
I'm
I
so
like
sorry.
Tina. I like Tina, but
You like Tina? Why do you like Tina?
I
I say
thought
not accusatory at all.
she wasn't my favorite character. She wasn't my least favorite character. I just thought she was somebody who, you know, played a role. I thought they had a love-hate relationship quite often, Bet and Tina, uh, bringing out the best in each other and the worst at times. So,
What
but
was
she
it?
was naggy. She was naggy after, you know, especially the second time around I watched, you could tell more of the personalities, and that's true. But I didn't dislike her. I didn't love her. You know, she was okay.
Sure.
No.
We could have done a whole
Um,
rating system like showed him. Sorry, what, Anthony?
so fun fact, my assistant Natalie is here watching the show with me, and she has seen some of the L Word, and she
Okay.
said, I hate Tina.
Tina sucks. I hate her.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's all you get.
Wow.
Well,
You can tell based on the name of the couple, like the couple name. Isn't it like Tibet? Isn't that what they call them? Tibet?
Yeah,
That's not a good name,
yeah.
okay? It's not gonna work for me. But no, I don't know why I feel the way I do, other than the fact I think once again I'm just defending Bet, and in hardship, and for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, Tina didn't show up. But I mean, we can talk about how Bet did cheat on Tina, but we don't need to go any further than that, because then you know what, Tina then leave and just permanently leave, and then she keeps on coming back. And I get the whole trope of just like their love transcends time and obstacles, and look, they're back. And when she shows up in that door in Generation Q, I was so upset. Bet was about to go off with it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm
classic
sorry
Tina.
for any Tina. I'm sorry, Tina. I'm very sorry, but it's Jennifer Beals. Any other thoughts from anyone else? Well, if you have not watched this series, I know that it's not just full of people who are poorly written, I promise. There's some really cool content, very, very steamy scenes. So there's some good comedy. I highly recommend going chronologically and starting off with the L Word OG. I think it's worth the watch to go watch Generation Q, but manage your expectations, you know, just manage them. If you're just looking for more Jennifer Beals content, which is ultimately what I was doing, then it'll be fine. But if otherwise, just miss the mark.
I
Do
mean,
you,
it's better than watching the Book of Boba Fett with Jennifer Beals.
one criticism from some of the reviews I read was that there was too much steamy sex and relationships going on, and that bothered some people, like, because the whole persona around lesbians early on were that, you know, Bergenstocks and, you know, flannel shirts, and they're not really highly sexual, and so on and so forth. And this show portrayed that not to be so. And so, you know, I find that quite ironic, the criticism from some of the male reviews. So what do you two think about that? And if the audience has any thoughts on that before we head out.
As far as like the staging of the intimacy and like the whole like, are we just doing this? Like, it clearly wasn't intended for that audience, right? Like I saw it to be maybe not necessarily true in every single sense, but definitely sensual enough where it resonated. It was powerful. I
Mhm.
shamefully and I give me the steamy scene with Candace and Jennifer Beals in their prison cell any day. But like at the end of the day, I would not be on the end of the spectrum where I thought that it was too much and it was outlining a disservice to queer identity in the name of promiscuity. I think it was great. Adriana?
I mean, I think this is a really complicated and fraught topic. Like, you could really, really, really go in depth on the concept of the gaze and how
Yeah.
GAZ, you know, and like lesbian images in media. But I guess I'll try to be brief, and I'll just say that, you know, there is a school kind of line of thinking that any representation of female sexuality is inherently like for men. And so, you know, I think some people have discomfort when, you know, women are shown to be very assertive or aggressive sexually. And certainly
Mhm.
the L Word is a show full of women owning their sexualities and,
Yep.
you know, being horny and acting on those feelings. And, you know, to Kathy's earlier point, I do think that to a degree, Showtime was trying to reel in like the straight male viewer. But I think
Right.
it's a huge mistake to completely dismiss any kind of more active, assertive kind of female sexuality or lesbian sexuality as being harmful or for men. I think we go down some really dangerous
Yeah.
avenues of when we ignore the fact that women are also sexual beings and that there are plenty of women who find other women sexually attractive. So yeah, that this is a whole issue. I've been ranting about this topic a lot because there's some wild discourse going on online right now with Love Lies Bleeding,
Yep.
which I highly recommend to everybody on this call. Go see that movie. We are actually opening this film on Friday. It's been playing theaters for several weeks now, but Banco is getting it on Friday. It stars Kristen Stewart and Katie O'Brien. It is a super pulpy, fun, sexy crime thriller. The kind of movie that doesn't get made anymore. But now I'm going on one of my other tangents. But yeah, like this is a complicated topic. But like overall, I would say I disagree with those male critics who said that.
Yeah.
You know, I think probably those men might have been uncomfortable with seeing female sexuality presented in the way that the show presents it. So, but yeah, I don't agree with that assessment.
Sure. So if there's anything you're going to take away from this talk tonight, is that engage with queer media, engage with it, and whether it is through our film series, our free screenings, Netflix, all the different streaming sites, but definitely come check out our free screenings and go check out the new films that are coming out. Do see anything that I would watch Kristen's Ready to Sandwich, but I digress. We just want thank you for allowing us to share our thoughts about the L Word. We hope this encourages you and empowers you to check out the series for yourself and formulate your own opinions if you haven't already, or maybe take it out for a rewatch. You know, take it out. What am I saying? Stream it, watch it, do all the fun stuff, and engage with it. But Anthony's back. Anthony, any closing remarks you'd like to share?
Well, when I watch this show, it's going to be really hard for me to not hate Tina, is what I've gathered. So,
No,
yeah.
you'll have Jenny to.
Tina is fine. Like,
There will be Jenny.
No, I
It's
know.
fine. It's
Well, I think I told you guys this once, not to, end this, as someone who has not seen the show. I know many of the, the actors are in it, but fun story, 2011, I went to Pride in West Hollywood because I had an internship there over the summer. And when I was there, they had the cast of the L Word there doing like a brief talk back. Now, I do not remember seeing Pam Grier there or Jennifer Beals. I would have remembered that. But I think there was a good chunk of the cast there. I do not remember though if they also had there's another one called like the Next L Word, correct? Or something like that. There's a
oh, are you thinking about like the real L Word or whatever it was called?
Reality
It was
TV
like
I think they had a
show.
mixture of both, but yeah.
Sure.
But anyway, fun fact, I just wanted to say, I'm tight with those actors because I once shared a space from
I'm
afar.
tight with those actors.
Anyway,
if you saw Kate Manning in person, I'm very jealous.
well, I might have, I don't know. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching this. This will be posted on YouTube on Thursday, so you can check this out there. It will also go on to the Lehigh Valley LGBTQ plus film series, our actual website. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll see all of our amazing video content and more. So again, yes, Love Lies Bleeding is opening on Friday. See it. It is bonkers, bananas, and wow, amazing. So yeah, thank you guys so much. For all this and more, go to steelstacks.org/film. I'd like to thank once again Alessandra, Kathy, and Adriana. I realize you're all muted, so if we could all give one of those clap emojis to them and I'll make all of the noises. Okay, cool. All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye, Tina.